Okay, let's take a minute now and break down a couple real-world examples from some work I've done. Let's watch the whole thing through to get an idea of what was created. And I'll go here to fit. Okay, cool. So let's break that down. We start with a radial wipe. And that is simply just an offset from the white background to the blue circle. You can see that here. These are just two keyframes on a radial wipe effect. And you can get to that effects panel by double clicking if it isn't already shown up here. We double click it, it pops up. And these same attributes are available in the layers panel down here. Okay? So we've got the background, we've got the blue circle. Then what happens next? We get the chair, scales up, and the shadow comes out. Okay? So the chair itself is just a solid. And if we hit M, we can see all the masks. You can also see them here. Just a bunch of masks drawing it out. If you don't want to go into Illustrator, you can do all of this kind of asset creation within After Effects using masks. So this is a subtraction one. So you can see that to create a flat level surface at the bottom, that's just the subtraction option here. Subtract. It's a little off the screen. Let me scroll down. Subtract. So you can have different types of masks. You can animate them. In this case, the entire layer was scaled up. You can also see that I did have a radial wipe on this, but I turned it off. There's a visibility switch right here, and you can see it also up here, it's off. That's just a decision I made later that I had enough radial wipes with the ones we were already doing. I didn't need that to radial wipe on as well. So we can see the scale starts right here. Here's the first keyframe of scale, and that's just scaled up. And with that is also scaled up is the shadow. Here's the scale attribute. It's just scaled up. And then the masks are animated, or the mask, there's just one, is just animated out to expand out. And here we can see those keyframes here. Okay? So that's pretty cool. And we can see we just used a subtraction from this mask here. So you can copy and paste masks. What I did was just hit Control-C, and then we can see that there's two masks here. And I hit Control-V, and I used an intersect blend mode for this mask so that it would cut out the shadow from the circle. So if we change this to something like add, we can see that doesn't work. So you can use these blend modes to really create anything that you want. Now the whole thing moves. We have multiple layers that move together. So like we talked about in the transitions, we could go through and select all of these and hit P and animate that, but we'd have three different layers animating. We'd have to animate together and keep track of. So what's a lot easier is we can see that I used a null, director chair null. So we can scroll up and see here's the director chair null. Okay, that's what has the animation on it. The position, we can see that right here. Boom, it goes over there. As that happens, we're just scaling up some text, 150. We can see that happens right here. Not only that, but it has an overshoot. Remember overshoots? So we go past 100% and then back down to it. This keyframe in the middle is 110%, and then we drop down to 100. That gives it a little interest and calls attention to it when it scales up. Now you can remember this from the last video as well. So if we select director and hit U, we can see that we did a lot of overshooting here. We went past 90 degrees, then back past 90 degrees, and then settled on it. And then what's great about this is once you do this one time, we can select and copy these keyframes and add it to a new text. So that's what I did right there. That's the same keyframes, just copied and pasted there. And since they're not happening at the same time, it looks a little different. they're rolling out like one after the other. Boom, boom. Okay. Now we have a flourish, which we'll get into later. But just to keep things going, right? We want to keep visual interest. We don't want to just hold on this for the next little bit and have nothing happen. Flourishes are a way to keep things rolling and keep the pace going. We just did a transition there just from scaling things up and down. Then we did another flourish. And now we took the entire thing to get that to transition to a new scene. We just scaled it down. We scaled everything down to now it looks like a little ballot card. And we can get to that. We can see that there's a ballot card null, layer 174. So we can scroll up to 174, and there's ballot card null. Hit U, and we can see that animation. Scaling down, rotating, and translating up, okay? And what's interesting about this one is the null that was controlling the director chair is parented to this ballot card null. And so we have a hierarchy here that the director's chair is following the null is following another null, okay? So it's gonna all move together. Okay, so this ballot box here is just created with a bunch of squares, with masks on them. That's it. You know, created a shadow, subtracted it out, and then have slightly different colors for each one to give an indication of shape. Okay, that's it. The card is animated down into the ballot box. And how that's done is in this moment, I switched to a pre-comp. I took all these layers, I copied them and sent them into a pre-comp so that they'll now be able to move together, and I could do one track mat. The concept of track mats is that you can take a shape and subtract it by another one. So all I did was take a solid, a black solid, create a mask around it, around the area that I wanted, and then I just chose alpha inverted mat. If we turn this off, and we'll turn off the mat itself, this just goes through. We don't want it to just go through, we want it to look like it's going in. So I created this pre-comp of all the layers so that it'll all be in the same pre-comp together, just copied and pasted in. And then now we can have one track mat affect it. So I just created a solid. I created a mask around the area that I don't want it to show. And then when you select this, it'll automatically hide the track mat. We'll go alpha inverted, and there it is. Now we have it disappearing right at that point. Okay. If this is complicated or you have questions, create a discussion in the class. We're covering a lot of topics that might seem complex at first, but once you try them yourself, you'll see that they're not too complicated. So these hand wavy things are just assets I created in Photoshop. So these fan fingers are pre-comps of other animation. We can see when we hit U, nothing pops up, so we know the animation is hidden within the pre-comp. If we double click on one of the pre-comps, we're going to jump into it. We can see it's just a bunch of different layers, and they all have their own animation on it, okay? And what's interesting is all this is showing up red, and why is that? Let's zoom in here and see the keyframes. And we can recreate one of these. Let's hit Command D to duplicate the layer. We'll hit U, and we will delete the keyframes. That's fine. It's telling us we have an error because there's an expression we're going to do here in a second. So we have, let's pull down all the transforms. So we have, let's pull this one out to the side. We can see it's a 3D layer. I'm not sure why I did that because we're not actually animating any of the 3D attributes. So we could just turn that off to make it a little more simple for our purposes. We can also see that I've separated the dimensions here. Right-clicking on them, you can see that's checked. If we uncheck that, then it'll put them back together. So separate dimensions, and we can create a looping animation fairly easily. Let's have it go up, and then we can copy this keyframe and paste it over here. It's going to go back down. Let's easy ease that. Keyframe assistant, easy ease, or F9. So now it goes up and down one time. if we alt-click on the stopwatch, now we get some more options. Let's click this little arrow over here, and we get a ton of options that look really complicated, and they're not really. Let me scroll down so we can see them a little bit. Click the arrow, we'll go down to Property, and choose Loop Out Type Cycle, okay? Because we're going to cycle the animation. So it gives us the script, we can deselect it, and now we can see that it cycles up and down once it gets to the keyframes. It's not going to do it before. Once it gets to the keyframes, now it's just going to keep cycling. Okay, so all we had to do was just 3 keyframes, and now we have this going up and down for infinity. Now to do this for rotation, we can see that, let's just copy and paste it. We'll just copy and paste the rotation values. Okay. We did the same thing. It turned red because we can see that we've already done, when you copy and paste it, it'll also take this, the script. So we've already done that. We don't need to do it again. So we can see once it gets there, it's going up and down and left to right. So we've just created a cycle animation. It's pretty cool. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.